three's cohort of Women in Africa's Young Leaders. And today I'll be in conversation with Thokozile Nhlumayo. So this is part of Women in Africa's Initiatives for Young Leaders Program. It's an initiative that is part of WIA's desire to promote equal opportunities and to allow young leaders to be supported each year to go further. So this, as I mentioned, is the first in the series, and there'll be five more women that I'll be in conversation with over the next few weeks. So just to introduce myself, my name is Lisa-Marie Misztak. I'm a journalist and a broadcaster. I'm also the UK ambassador for the Women in Africa initiative. And so for today's session, I'll be in conversation with Thokozile Nhlumayo. Thokozile is an advocate of political and social justice who has made significant contributions to the development of African politics and leadership. She created the hashtag Not Too Young to Lead campaign, which is now a global movement. She is also the Secretary General of the International Youth Parliament, an organization that advocates for the meaningful inclusion of young people in politics, leadership, and decision-making. So welcome, Thokozile.
Thank you very much.
Just to give a little bit of information about what's going to happen over the next hour, for the next 45 minutes, I'll be in conversation with Thokozile. I'll then open the floor for questions. So for the remaining 15 minutes, you'll be able to ask any questions that you might have for Thokozile. Please do put them in the chat box. Wherever you are watching this, there should be a function for you to be able to put your questions to her, and we will endeavour to be able to answer those questions for you. So please do use this opportunity to get all the amazing insight and knowledge that Thokozile has, and we'll do that in about 45 minutes time. So Thokozile, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Right, so I want to jump straight into the webinar. I've just announced you're a political and social justice advocate. So tell us, how did you first get started in that sector?
My love for my work rather stems from my pursuit to promote inclusion in politics and governance around the continent of Africa. So I'm really a huge fan of drawing inspiration from one's past experiences and journey to create a whole new narrative. So I have my own fair share of experiencing systemic oppression. So most of my work is also influenced by my journey and personal experiences. And so, just to share how it all started. Am I audible?
Yes, it broke up for a second, but you're back now.
Oh, great. So I was saying that most of my work is largely influenced by my journey and personal experiences as both a woman and a young person. So just to share how it all started. A few years ago, when I was much younger than I am right now, I decided to pursue a leadership role after being a political activist for some time. And I decided to pursue the role because I felt I was ready and I was capable as well. Because I had contributed so much to the growth of that organization and also to the growth of the leaders within the organization. But to my disappointment, I was told by my leaders within the organization that for this role that you are pursuing, we are afraid you might be a bit too ambitious because it's too hardcore for a woman. So we would rather prefer a man to take over this role, or if it's not a man, to be somebody above the age of 55. So that was quite a disappointment for me because I thought South Africa believed in the leadership of young people and women. So out of my disappointment, I decided to start the hashtag Not Too Young to Lead campaign. But I wasn't too ambitious when I started the campaign. It was just out of frustration, so I could voice my opinions and, bring to bear the disparities within the political spectrum. So the main purpose of the campaign when it started was to hold the government of South Africa and political parties accountable on the number of young people that they appoint into public office, and women as well as they appoint into public office. So to my surprise, the campaign actually literally spread out throughout the continent of Africa. I would receive DMs and calls from young people in North, Central, East, West Africa who were saying to me, listen, I've been denied an opportunity to lead because of my age. Others were saying because of my gender. And so this became a conversation, and it grew, and the campaign became bigger than what I expected it to be, because I had anticipated that it would be a conversation that would happen, in South Africa, but then regional conversation. And that's where I met 3 other young people who were from different parts of Africa, and we were just, driving this campaign, and it was recognized by the African Union. And once it was also recognized by the African Union, that's when, to cut the long story short, that's when I was appointed as the Secretary General of the International Youth Parliament. So the International Youth Parliament, its main purpose is to promote inclusive and collaborative governance in Africa by advocating for meaningful inclusion of young people into political leadership and decision-making roles. So once I assumed the position in the International Youth Parliament, I also decided, I don't want to be alone in this battle, so I want to draw other women in. And I decided to launch through my office the Women's Political Leaders Program, which also promotes inclusion of women in politics by empowering them with skills to run for public office. So yes, we are an institution that exists in 45 countries in Africa. And some of the conversations that I started when I started the hashtag Not Too Young to Lead campaign are still ongoing within the parliament itself, but also the movement itself, because it's no longer a campaign now. It's a global movement that is also joined by other young people, young women outside of the continent of Africa. And that's how I got into the work that I'm doing now.
So you've mentioned all the different things that you've done over the years to be able to help support people get into politics, as well as your hashtag taking off. But I just want to go back to you. So you mentioned that you started this around, 18 years ago?
No, not 18.
Sorry. How many years ago did you said that you tried to get into politics a few years ago?
Yes, a few years ago. So I will have to see. So it was 2017 when I launched.
So
I don't know how many years that was.
In 2017, when you tried to get into politics, what I wanted to do is just go back. Before that, what was it initially that got you inspired to even want to get into politics? Because when we look across the continent, it's said that there's we have the youngest population there. I think 70% of people are under the age of 30. And the majority of people who are in politics or hold positions of power are over a certain age, if not 50 and above. So what was it that inspired you as a young person to get involved or want to get involved and take that step to get involved in politics?
So coming from South Africa, having grown up in South Africa, I was born and raised in South Africa. I'm still in South Africa even now. So we have a rich history, a rich political history, and I was inspired by the significant role that was played by young people at that time, who safely transitioned us into the democratic country that we are today. So I was fortunate when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, even though I was still very young. I was probably 3-4 years old, but I could, as young as I am, I could see the jubilation around. I could see how aesthetic, people were, and I could really sense the ambience in South Africa, and people have been, to put it like, to have been safely transitioned, into this new world that is full of possibilities, into democracy as well. So I think that's probably where my love for politics started. But having also learned more about politics from a young age, and coming from, I could say, a political home as well, when I became old enough to vote, I decided this is what I want to do, because I drew inspiration from, hearing what other young people did in the past. I thought I also want to contribute to shaping the future of my country. So it wasn't really that big of an ambition when I joined politics. But once I got into the political space, that's when the passion grew, and that's when I decided, upon seeing other things and learning more about what politics really are, that's when I started growing and wanting to pursue, and collaborative governance and equality within the political spectrum. So
I think the line keeps cutting out. Okay, we've got you back now. It was cutting out for a second, but you're back now. So you mentioned after you tried to get into politics initially and you were told that you were too young, it then led you to create the hashtag not too young to lead. And from there, it just exploded across the continent. What were some of the reactions that you got? You mentioned you got some messages from people. What were young people saying across the continent in regards to not being too young to do that role?
So the common thread was that most of these young people were saying that, I'm not given a space to even voice my opinions as a young person. I don't see myself in politics because nothing inspires me or encourages me to be in politics. I don't see politics as a space for young people. Others were saying, I was told that politics are not for women. And so when I saw this hashtag, not too young to lead, I thought, there are young people out there who also feel that they are denied opportunities because, I don't know, the world, not just Africa, but the entire world has a perception that young people are apathetic. There's apathy amongst young people when it comes to issues related to politics, issues rather related to decision making, related to democracy. So the common thread from these young people was that we want to be there, but we're not given a space to be there. We're not even given an opportunity for our voices to be heard. So that's why we're discouraged to even participate. But this hashtag actually gives us hope that there are other young people who have similar interests.
So your current role now is the Secretary General of the International Parliament. What's a typical day like for you in that role?
So, as I said before, that the ethos of our work is to advocate for meaningful inclusion of young people into political decision making and all types of leadership roles. So, a typical day would be to first support and endorse young people who run for public office, especially this year, because this is quite a political year in Africa. A lot of countries are going into elections, so we support young people who pursue political roles in their different countries. We also advocate by creating synergy between young leaders and decision makers. So we create that flawless communication between young leaders and their decision makers, whether it's at national level or at regional level, for example, through the African Union. So that's what our typical day looks like.
And getting into those roles that you do now in terms of the support that you have for other young people getting into politics, what was it like when you were first initially got into this role that you're doing now and making sure that your voice was heard?
Can you repeat that?
I think it froze for a second. I was asking about the role that you do now and also the roles that you've done in the past. What is it like when you go into situations or meetings with people who are a lot older to make sure that your voice is actually heard?
So I always say that my main job is to preserve and strengthen democracy. So I'm doing that through trying to promote inclusivity within governance, within the political space, and it's not always easy. You know, when you speak, it's one thing to speak about inclusion, everyone understands you, but once you put in the collaborative aspect of it and say it's inclusion and collaboration, then it then becomes a bit of a challenge because there's that challenge of trying to convince those that have had the privilege to be there before, those that have had a lot of power, to collaborate with those that have been marginalized for a very long time. So you are pushing inclusion here, but you are also disturbing people's spaces of comfort, you know, people who have been there, who don't want anything to threaten their level of comfortability when it comes to power. So it becomes a bit challenging to try to create that synergy, to say that we're not only looking for inclusion, but we actually want the young and old to collaborate. We want the experienced and the less experienced to collaborate. We want the marginalized and those that are in power, those that have had, you know, the privilege to collaborate. So it's about creating those conversation lines that I know. So those are some of the challenges that we come across. But yeah,
have you noticed that
by all means to create that synergy?
Sorry to interrupt. Have you noticed that there was also a slight flip side to that? Were you surprised at some people who are really willing to help you and give you a platform and a voice?
Yes, definitely. So, like I said before, it's all about creating a space for conversation. Because what I realized was that because the conversation is not there, then assumptions are made to say that young people don't want to, ones that have been there don't want to give us a seat at the table. But once there's a conversation there, then you realize that actually there are those that want to open the door for younger people, you know?
Thokozile, sorry to interrupt you again. I think there's quite a bit of static and a crunching sound that keeps happening whenever you're talking. So
right, I think I should remove my earpiece.
Yes, that might help.
Is it all right? Is it better now?
Much better, much better. Thank you. I didn't actually realize you had headphones in, otherwise I would have mentioned it. Perfect. Thank you for that explanation. So you've mentioned about the inclusivity, bringing people together around the table, you know, to be able to talk with one voice, to be able to achieve something new. But I would like to find out what has been the main obstacle for you personally in the work that you do.
So I always say that I face on a daily basis double bias. Double bias in a sense that I'm a woman, but I'm not just a woman, I'm also a Black woman. So I that the main obstacle has to be that I constantly have to prove myself every day, not just as a woman, but as a Black woman as well in this highly hidebound industry, you know. So it I think that is the main obstacle, because you have to break glass ceilings every day as a woman. And you know, they sorry, I got distracted there by the chat box. I'm sorry. So so you have to break glass ceilings every day. There's no single day that you don't have to face biases and having to prove yourself, sometimes unnecessarily, because you know you're a woman, but also you're a Black woman at the same time. So once you and the one other interesting thing is that once you get accepted into the system as a woman, there are also those boundaries that are put in place to say that yes, you are a leader, you are a female leader, but you know you cannot speak this way, you cannot behave this way, you cannot cross certain boundaries, and you cannot disturb certain hierarchies within, you know, the political spectrum. So once you start to challenge, you know, those boundaries, once you start to become what they don't expect a female leader to be, and once you disturb, you know, those certain hierarchies, you're no longer viewed as a female leader, but a threat rather, and you're no longer celebrated. So those are some of the obstacles that I have to face as a woman in politics, you know, on a daily basis.
Can I just ask about some of those obstacles are? You've mentioned, just for other people who are listening in, others who might be wanting to get into a similar type of role that you're doing. You've mentioned these obstacles. Can you give an example of what a particular obstacle might be?
Yeah, definitely. So just to be less technical and more, you know, to say something a lot of people that can relate with. When you engage in intellectual conversations, because we live in a highly technical and virtual world these days since COVID, you will send an email, you know, and get invited to speak somewhere. And then you communicate through emails. Once you get to that space, you will hear comments like, I thought I was speaking to a man all this time. And you were highly, you know, eloquent in your emails, the way you were speaking, the way you were so powerful in getting your point across. I thought you were a man, you know, but once you get there, I mean, and then you get surprised that, okay, is this, so are you trying to say that, because I was so sure of myself when I sent those emails, and because I knew how to get my point across, and because it sounded so intellectual, you immediately assumed that I'm speaking to a male leader. You know, those are some of the obstacles that you come across, you know, of people who immediately assume that, oh, this space is definitely not for women, or women are for administrative roles or less challenging roles within the political spectrum, if I may put it that way.
And you mentioned earlier about the work you do to help support women, or get more women into politics. What type of advice do you give to them when you're working with them?
When I realized how tough things... Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Oh, perfect. So I always say that one thing I did when I realized the kind of obstacles that women come across in this space, I made sure that I create a tribe of women that look like me. Not just, when I say look like me, I'm not saying in terms of skin color, in terms of melanin and what, but women, you know, who can relate to the woman that I am now. So I made sure that I create a tribe
so that we become a collective. I don't become just one woman who's going through these challenges, because there are many other women who are facing the same challenges. So it's important to have a tribe of women that will become a collective. You know, they say these days that collaboration is the new competition, you know. So I made sure that I bring other women along, and we create this formidable tribe that also becomes a way of us holding each other accountable, you know. And that comes from the belief that once we are a collective, it's not easy for somebody to just come in and, you know, and dismantle what we have. So that is the advice I would give to other women, that never allow yourself to, or don't pride yourself in being the only woman in a boardroom. Don't pride yourself in the only woman in the industry. It becomes much easier if you are a collective with other women.
And what advice would you give to other women to take that step to get into politics?
I think the most powerful tool you can use, whether you're a woman, a young person, or just a person who wants to get, you know, into a space, is your voice. Your voice is the most powerful tool. So use your voice to challenge systems, to challenge, you know, to dismantle systems, but to also challenge the status quo. I always say that because we live in a virtual and technical world as well, we also need to embrace platforms such as social media, and make sure that we view social media as a catalyst for positive social change. So we need to use our voice in every way that we can in order for us to be heard. So that's the advice I would give other women, that use your voice. That is the first step into getting into any industry, even if it's not politics.
Mm-hmm. Now, thank you for sharing your story. I want to move on to the Women in Africa Young Leaders, which you are one of. So you're one of the women who won last year in the 2023 cohort. So I want you to just explain a bit about what it is and what's happened so far.
So this program is one of very powerful programs that bring different abilities of women, you know, in Africa, and, you know, enhance those abilities for these women to become not just catalysts of positive change in the continent of Africa, but to become influencers to other women, to become influencers in the economic sector, to become influencers in every aspect of development in Africa. So it's a program that really, I always say that Africa has always been waiting for, because it gives women that collective image, you know. We are women, we are a group of 10 women who come from different backgrounds. There are women who are in technology, there are women who are entrepreneurs, there are women who are just doing amazing things in the agricultural sector. Within this program, again, you'll find women who are in the media sector, you know, who are doing a lot of things. So it's rich in a sense that it's able to bring together these different sectors of development, you know. And so we've grown to become an ecosystem, all 10 of us. And one thing I always say about the Women in Africa program is that it realizes that as women, we're not a homogenous group, you know, like the world has been treating us as if we are a homogenous group, and everything that, you know, that has to do with women is just, this blanket approach to say, okay, this is for women, this is how we approach it. But we are different. We have different backgrounds, we have different aspirations, we have different strengths, we have different abilities. And the Women in Africa program was able to clearly and powerfully embrace that, we are diverse, and our different skills created this beautiful ecosystem that brings together our different skills, and we are able to tap into each other's strengths. So it's really been a wonderful journey being with Women in Africa.
Apologies, I think I'm having a bit of gremlins on my line because my camera keeps going out. But that's great to hear that you have created your own ecosystem with the other women that took part. So what initially led you to apply for the WIA Young Leaders?
So I think I briefly also mentioned that it beautifully aligned with my aspirations and my values as a leader, because I always say that my work cannot happen in isolation. I always want to see opportunities on how I can collaborate with other sectors of development, because I believe, governance cannot happen in isolation. It needs to also feed into economy, technology, the environmental sector. And that's why, because my work is all about promoting inclusive and collaboration, not just in governance, but, in all sectors of development in Africa. So when I applied, I had seen how we would be able to tap into each other's strengths as women who come from different sectors and create this beautiful ecosystem. So, and that's exactly what I got when I became a part of this.
And what was the process like applying for this program?
So the process, I would say, was okay. The process itself was quite accessible. It was easy for us to apply and to access the information. But being selected was the tougher part of it, because it was quite a, you can imagine thousands and thousands of women applying for a program that's only going to select 10 women in the entire continent of Africa. So it was quite a challenging process, because we had to go through different steps before we could even get to the interview stage. But once I got selected, I then, I gave myself a huge tap to say, you've really done well. So yeah.
Well done indeed. And what advice would you give to someone else who might be thinking about applying for this year's new program?
I think be prepared, do your research very well, learn from women who've been there before, because there are other cohorts that have been there, not just ours, but there are other cohorts before ours. So contact these women, speak to them, let them mentor you into having a powerful application. I think that's the advice I would give to those who want to apply, that speak to those that have been there before, and they will assist you to make the process easier.
Good advice there. So as well as you mentioning the community that you built with the other women who were selected, what else would you say were some of the standout or important things that you've learned as part of this journey as being a WIA young leader?
So we are 10 women that are not just ordinary women, but we are resilient women, because all of us are here in our recent career paths because of our personal experiences. The women that I've met in this program who shared their personal experiences, and I was left thinking, I thought I was the only one, who had those challenges. But upon hearing that the women who are with me here, some of them that I look up to, upon hearing that they also had, challenges and personal experiences that shaped who they are today, it made me realize that we're not just 10 women, but we are 10 resilient women. So the other thing that I think is very powerful, is a very powerful takeaway from this program, is the collaboration, not just the sisterhood, but the collaboration as well that we are able to form with each other. I mean, we can easily tap into each other's strengths, into each other's experiences, into each other's skills, into each other's resources as well. You know that if you're experiencing challenges in South Africa, there's Ida in Morocco, who's in North Africa, who can easily be of assistance to you. There are women from West Africa, there are women from East Africa. So it's really, like I said, an ecosystem that, we are able to also feed each other and hold each other accountable as well.
So an ecosystem is important, and accountability. But what about yourself in your own journey? Have you had mentors that have helped to shape and support you?
Definitely. I'm a huge fan, and a firm believer in mentorship, because I always say that even though I started the journey alone, but what shaped me to become the woman that I am today is other women who have been with me throughout the journey. And when we think of mentors, sometimes we think of people that, are above us, people that have made it already. But, a mentor can be anybody who has similar experiences as yours, or who you can learn from a personal level to a professional level. So I always say that I've had different mentors. So when I mention mentors, I don't just mention those that have contributed to my professional life, but I also acknowledge the mentors that have also contributed to my personal life in shaping me to be the resilient woman that I am today. So mentors are very important.
And what advice would you give to someone to go about getting a mentor? I've heard you've mentioned it doesn't matter if someone's more successful or less successful, or younger, older. What advice would you give to help someone even identify someone to potentially be a mentor?
So I think I've mentioned that when I applied for this program, their values aligned very well with my values as a leader. So it's the same process when you identify a mentor. Identify someone that you can see that has the same ambitions, the same values that you hold as well. So it may be somebody who's much more successful. It can be somebody who's on the same level with you. It can be somebody, it also depends the kind of mentorship that you are looking for. But it's important that you make sure that this is someone whose values align with with yours when it comes to leadership, or to whatever kind of path that you want to take for your career.
So mentors are very important. Do you also mentor other people?
Absolutely. I mentor other people. I don't just mentor women, but I mentor all kinds of people. I always say that in South Africa, we say that we are a rainbow nation. So I always say that I am the direct reflection of what a rainbow nation is, because in my space, I mentor all types of people, those that are older than me, those that are younger than me, those that have the same gender as me, those that do not have, the same gender as me. So I inspire people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, different genders, different races as well. So yes, I do mentor a lot of people, and I think it's important to not close yourself or confine yourself to what you do only, but you can learn a lot even from people who don't have the same beliefs as you, who don't have the same vision as you have. So we learn a lot every day from different experiences, but also from different people.
And what advice would you give to someone following in your own footsteps? You apply for different programs, initiatives. I've seen online that you applied for the Obama program. What advice would you give to someone who might be a bit hesitant and thinking they might not be qualified enough for these types of things to be able to actually go above that and just put themselves out there?
So I think the most important step is to do it. Just do it. Just apply. You will never know your potential until you apply for these programs. So sometimes you will be rejected, others you'll be surprised to even be selected for others. And that's the only time you will ever know, if you are capable or not. And I don't think that there will be a time where you ever find out that you're not capable, because even if you do not become selected, it's an opportunity for you to grow yourself, to also reflect and see what you could improve as well about yourself. So these are great ways to improve yourself, because even if, like I said, even if you do not make it, it's an opportunity for you to go back again, reflect and see which areas need improvement.
So you mentioned about even...
But if you don't apply at all... Sorry.
No, sorry to interrupt you. I was about to say, so you mentioned as well as applying, there might be some setbacks. What about for yourself? Has there been a time where you've applied for something and you might not have got it and you've been disheartened and you've applied again? What advice would you have for that?
Yeah, and I think this also builds your resilience. Of course, I've had many programs that I've applied for and I did not make it. The other programs that I applied for the first time, I didn't make it, but when I tried for the second time, I was selected. So like I said, it also builds your resilience, and it also helps you to improve. So I know that when we are in this leadership space, sometimes it's hard to accept rejection, but I've learned that that is actually the best way to build resilience, So yes, I've been rejected many times, but it was an opportunity for me to keep improving myself.
Exactly. Rejection builds resilience. So right now I'm going to open up the floor and have a look and see if we've got any questions. I do have a few that I have. I don't know the name, but I have got one. It's where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
So I have an interesting way of answering that question. Every time someone asks me, where do you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years? I always say that I see myself not doing the work that I'm doing now. Why? Because I do not want in 10 years' time to see a need for us to do this type of work, because the world would have been educated at that time, about the importance of inclusivity, about the importance of equity, about the importance of collaborating, about the importance of embracing, justice, social justice. So as long as we are still doing this work, it means we are not yet there. So once I see myself not doing this work anymore and focusing on other things, then I will know that I would have achieved, what I want the world to be like. So also in 10 years' time, I see myself in the United Nations, because I believe that my voice still needs to be heard on a more global level. So I see myself being there as well, and I see myself having impacted a lot of women, to continue, with the work that we do. But not exactly what we do now, but to continue with the work in a more innovative and better way than we are doing now.
I have another question. You kind of touched on this before, but what is your typical day?
So my work involves a lot of policy reviewing, a lot of talking. Public speaking is part of my work. As well, speaking on behalf of other people as well. So my typical day is really busy, if I may put it that way. So this is a highly political position, a highly political industry that we are in. So my typical day would involve, like I said, advocating, public speaking, policy reviewing, drafting, assisting in drafting laws. I don't really know what the context of the question is, if it's on my professional side of things or on my personal side of life. But yeah, that's what my day looks like.
There's a question from Binta, and they are asking, she's saying, thank you for the initiative. How did you manage to get prepared in order to be selected for this program? So how did you prepare for it?
I did South Africa website a lot. I made sure that I go through I was hoping every day that there's something I'm gonna see there that will help me, be more prepared for, getting into the interview stage, if in case I get sure about the program. Contact alumni, talk to them, ask questions. I think on the website as well, you'll find options of being able to also send feedback or questions to the Women in Africa team. So do that. And I think that makes you more prepared, because if you don't know much about a program, then you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. But, I always also say that when you apply for programs, make sure that you're also prepared to give something to the programs, not just to take, So also think about what you are willing to offer to women in Africa, or the other women that you're going to meet in case you get selected. So start thinking about such things, and that will assist you as well, when you start having interviews maybe with the Women in Africa team. I think that gives you a very powerful application to say, I also want to offer something. I don't want to just take from the program, but I have something to offer as well.
Good advice. There are
think about what you yeah.
No, carry on.
Yeah, I was saying that, so think about what you, once you meet the other women, what are some of the things that you would like to offer to them and also gain from them?
We have quite a few questions, and they're asking a similar thing about what made you stand out, which you've answered. I'm just scrolling up on this question and grab one. Okay. Who is the most innovative woman that you've met recently? So who is someone that you've met, a woman who might have inspired you?
So since we're talking about women in Africa, I might as well just mention someone I met in the program. So I just have to make sure of her name, because we casually call her Ife, but she's Ife Dayo Duresimi. Yes, she's from Nigeria. She's a young woman from Nigeria. I was fascinated by her initiative. She wants to open the first bank for women in Nigeria. And by 2025, she wants to have impacted 1 million women in Nigeria by giving them financial literacy and teaching them how to better manage their finances, but also create, an institution that will be favorable to them as women, a financial institution that will be favorable to them as women, as we know that even, when it comes to financial institutions, women are still discriminated. So I just had to say that she's one of the women that I've recently met that have really left a mark in my heart and in my mind, also to say, wow, there are young women who are so invested in growing others, especially knowing that women have always been great contributors to the economy of Africa as a whole. So I think what she's doing is brilliant, wanting to create a bank specifically for women. That's amazing.
Yeah, and we'll be speaking with her in probably a few weeks' time, so we'll be able to hear a bit more about her story. I've got another question from Michelle Chiremba, who is asking if you can be her mentor. So maybe next somehow after. Okay. Another question is, what is a book or film series, what is a book, film, or series that has inspired you the most in the last few months?
I read a number of books, quite a number of books, but one, if I were to choose one that really inspired me most, was a book called Alone. It's a book about young Africans living in the diaspora, and it's more like an anthology, and they're sharing their different stories. But there's one story that caught my attention there, of a young man from Sudan who went to live in the diaspora as a refugee, and when he got to the US, he had to live in the streets. It's quite a challenging story, but also a very inspiring one, because he had to live in the streets, but he managed to pursue his studies, and he became a doctor. So he's writing his story as a doctor now. And what I loved most about his story is that he came back to Africa to invest into young people in Africa, invest back into his community, into young people in East Africa, not just in Sudan only. And I love this book and this story, because we see a lot of young people leaving Africa, going to the diaspora for greener pastures, but they never come back to reinvest. So I loved this particular story, because it's a story of hope, to say that once we've made it, we also want to empower others.
Okay, and I've got another question. It's anonymous, but it's where do you get your confidence from? How do you stay confident?
I think it's a compliment. I love that people see me as someone who's confident. I love that. But I'm going to say this again, that once you surround yourself with people who share the same aspirations as you, with people who want the best for you, with people who are always ready to share their experiences with you, and I think that builds your confidence, that also strengthens you. So the tribe of women that I have in my life, I think they are the ones that contribute so much into the person that I am, and being able to tap into their strengths as well gives me the confidence that I have as a woman.
And are there any days where you're not feeling as confident, but you still have to put on a brave face and go out and do what you need to do?
There are many days like that. Many days, countless days days like that where you maybe what I'm doing is not enough, especially when you face obstacle hurdles along the way and you feel that people are just not receiving the work that you do the way that you want them to, and sometimes you feel maybe you're not, you are inadequate, because of your limitations or your shortcomings. There are days when you feel like that. I've felt like that way too many times, but I somehow am able to pick myself up because I think of the people that look up to me. There's a saying that goes, do not give up, because there are people every day who are looking at you, and once you give up, it's not just you that's going to be affected, but there are a lot of people whose hopes are going to be shattered. So I think that's what keeps me going when I have days like that, that there are other people that are looking at me and, they draw inspiration from me. So I don't want to disappoint them as well. So they rely on me to be strong also on their behalf.
And how supportive are your family with the work that you do?
Very supportive, very supportive. So I have a strong support structure. I have a son. He's very supportive in his own way, as young as he is. My mother, very supportive. So I have a very supportive family.
How old is your son?
So he's almost a teenager. My son is 13. Yeah.
Okay, so he's seen the work that you've been doing. Is he inspired by that? Is it something that he wants to get into, or is it's too early? He's only 13.
I think I think he is. I can safely say that he is inspired. Although I kept this to myself, there's a day when I bumped into an essay that he wrote as part of his project in class, and I just couldn't help but read the essay, and I was so emotional when I realized that, as part of his essay, he actually quoted me a few times, and there were times also when he was mentioning me and saying, I think my mom is going to be the next biggest thing this world has ever seen. So when I see such things, I really can see that, oh, really, I am inspiring this young man.
That's amazing. So I know the majority of, if not all of your work is working with young people, but is there an age range that you work with? You mentioned your son, he's 13. Do you work with younger people, younger than your son, to help inspire them to get involved or be just aware of what politics is?
To be honest, not yet. But as you are saying this, there are a lot of things that are happening in my mind, and I'm thinking perhaps this is the right time to start doing that, because I've only been working with the young. Yeah, so thank you for that. I've only been working with young people from 18 years and above, but mostly these are young people from 20. We have a few that are in the age range from 18, but these are young people that are well into their careers. Others have just started their careers. So typically it would be young people from 20 years and above, but thank you for that. Perhaps this is also, an opportunity to inspire the much younger ones, so that we can inspire them from a young age to become the leaders that we want them to become in future.
I've got more of a statement. It's Nhlumayo, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, and they're saying, I'm here because I want to be part of your tribe. So someone wants to be part of your tribe. I'm conscious that we've only got 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to scroll through and just stop on anything, just grab any question up. What gives you strength?
What gives me strength? I think this is almost the same as the question that said, what inspires you to wake up? What gives you confidence? What gives me strength? I think knowing that there are people. I'm gonna say this again. Knowing that there are people who are following my journey. Knowing that there are people who are looking up to me. There are people who draw inspiration from me. Gives me strength. And it keeps me going, because I dare not think of failing, because when I fail, or when I give up rather, I'll be disappointing not just myself, but too many people's hopes as well. So that gives me strength.
We've got 1 minute left, so I want to actually give the floor to you just to share anything, whether it's advice or just any type of knowledge that you might want to impart on those who are joining in. So I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you. So I always say that the most powerful tool I've ever owned is my voice. And my voice got me to where I am today. Had I been afraid at that time to use my voice, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So I always say to people, do not be afraid to use your voice. We may not all be orators, and we may not all be, well-spoken, but using your voice is not only about speaking, but, we've got, multiple platforms that we can use these days. We have social media, and if we correctly embrace it, it can really become a great catalyst for positive social change in the world. So use your voice. Do not be afraid of using your voice. Your voice is a very powerful tool. It can dismantle long existing systems of oppression. It can change the status quo, and it can inspire others. So you will never know if what you have is powerful if you do not use your voice. So that's what I want to say. And also, do not allow others to define who you are. Always define your success and yourself in your own terms. Do not allow the world to be the one that defines who you should become, how you should lead, how you should handle yourself. Be the one who defines that for yourself, and you will get really far in life. Thank you.
Powerful words to end on. Thokozile, thank you so much for sharing your journey and for your advice. And congratulations again for being selected as one of the WIA's young leaders. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for everyone joining us today.
Thank you.